The teaser that released on N7 Day is actually only 21 seconds long, but there's a ton of stuff in those 21 seconds. So let's break it down frame by frame like Mike Gamble intended. The clip opens in a dark hallway. As the character walks towards us, you can see their shoes that have a slight heel, which many have pointed out that this is reminiscent of Liara's shoes from the original trilogy. And yes, I agree, the wedge is familiar. But we've already seen her new shoes, and I don't think this is her either way. The character also has the red and white iconic N7 branding, affiliated with the Human Systems Alliance. I think this is a human N7. Behind them, to the far left, you can also see an additional figure in the background. And a lot of people have speculated this to be a Krogan, and I think it's definitely a possibility. I'll zoom in so you can see, but it looks like they're turning and facing the window. You can see the lights bouncing off of what I think are shoulder pads, and there is a light that moves with the movement of the figure. It looks similar to Grunt's old armor, where there is one individual light in the middle of his armor on both the front and back. The roundness of the figure's helmet isn't as curvy as Rex's, where it continues down the spine, but at this angle, from looking upwards, this one has a curve and then it looks like it drops off, so maybe a new Krogan armor. I couldn't find one that I thought would be an exact fit, but here are some similar designs. Next up, we have a city skyline, and some very tall high-rise buildings with sky cars flying across the window. I specifically think this is a city skyline, and I originally thought this might be from the Mass Effect relay-looking station from last year's clip, but this appears to have sky cars and too many smaller, fast-moving objects to be the same scene from last year's clip, which seems to have larger, slower ships aside from the small, singular ship that enters the camera from the right. It still could be the same location, but I don't think it is. We then see the character walk by some canisters that have 5s on the side of them. They are also the same color as the relay-looking structure from last year's clip, specifically with the white, black, and orange colors, which are Cerberus colors. And last year, Mike Gamble did like a tweet where someone pointed out that these are Cerberus colors. I couldn't find anything specifically that looked like these in-game, but the aesthetics reminded me of the vaults from the Citadel archives and also the aesthetics of the cryogenics room from Andromeda. But ultimately, I couldn't find anything that looked exactly like this in either Andromeda or the original trilogy. As the camera pans up, obviously we see this new N7, who looks like a woman with their feminine figure and smaller frame. And we see how amazing the back of their coat looks. This looks more like a light stealth jacket instead of actual armor. And someone pointed out on Twitter, this looks like there might be functionality to it. Maybe something can attach to it, weapons, or possibly something like a jump jet. It looks more than like it's just for aesthetics. And if you look at the buttons on the jacket, they are very much like the armor sets from Mass Effect 1, with the round circular attachments, and those were made from Casa Fabrications. And behind the N7, again, another window is showing the city. You can see the buildings better, but I don't really recognize anything specific here. There's also a panel behind the character right before they walk to the door. And I went back and couldn't find any exact doors like this, specifically with the illuminated lights. From what I found, the original trilogy had more square doors while Andromeda had more rounded, based on what I could find anyways. I think they do share a lot of door designs though, so I couldn't really pinpoint a specific origin of the door. As the outside comes into view, you can see street lights, which I haven't seen this design in Mass Effect before, and I don't actually remember seeing street lights at all previously. The character turns around to show us their very hidden head. Unlike the N7 armor, which had eyes visible through it, this helmet hides their identity. The figure appears to nod their head, possibly at the Krogan who is in the hallway. Maybe they're speaking or telling the Krogan to follow them. Next, the character walks into this bay that looks like it leads to outside, because it's very windy and very dusty. You can also see more sky cars flying by and what looks like to be a ship possibly waiting for the N7. It also does look like it could be the mud skipper from the concept art. There's also 4 or 5 descending figures above the ship here. And I've seen some people say that it looks like there's figures waiting for the N7 by the ramp, but to me it looks more like the ship's landing gear. But it is blurry, so it's hard to tell, but you can definitely see one figure waiting and the camera darkens their frame, making them more apparent in the final shot. It does also look like this figure could be wearing red. And the last shot is of this N7 leaving the corridor and going outside. It's very dusty, yellow, and windy, and maybe has a polluted atmosphere. There's a bunch of ships moving around, and it looks like a hangar bay possibly. I think this is a planet that is possibly dry or made up of mostly desert, but there's not a lot to go on, and it's weird to see such a dusty, windy looking place located right next to a city, like we saw when the character was walking through the hallway. So that's the trailer, so let's talk about the possible location first. When it comes to the location, we have several options and probably no answer, but I compiled a picture of every shot from the scenes behind the N7 figure. You can see multiple high-rise buildings and sky cars, and possible smaller ships. And this reminds me a lot of the Citadel, which has now been hinted at 3 times. But if this was the Citadel, the N7 walks out into what looks like a polluted, dusty, and windy area, which isn't like anywhere we've seen on the Citadel, so maybe not. It does also remind me of Corliss, known as the Starship Cemetery, with its atmosphere being polluted from being a toxic junkyard. Corliss is also very high in crime and murder, which looks like this N7 would fit right in. The buildings on Corliss look more decrepit and falling apart than the buildings in the back though, so again, maybe not. But with there being a possible Krogan in the beginning of the clip, and the music playing Arlac Company, it makes me lean towards this being a possible Krogan world. Maybe this could even be a rebuilt future Tuchanka, which does share similar aesthetics with the yellow haze and dust we see in the clip. The skyline also does look like it could be similar to the one of the concept art from last year, except the red atmosphere is missing. But the high-rise buildings and sky cars look similar. Also important to note that these sky cars in this Ilium concept are from the original trilogy, as is the dress the Cesari is wearing. Maybe the devs don't even know where this character is and it's just a simple city stand-in to fill the void. Who knows? So now that we've covered the visuals, let's cover the audio. First we have Eden Prime from Mass Effect 1, specifically the little sounds that remind me of bugs. And then it plays Andromeda. And I specifically remember this motif from when you meet PB. The music plays right as PB runs up and you're about to touch the console, but she stops you.
Wait!
This next part, I've seen people say that this is the Mars soundtrack, and while I think it sounds similar, I don't think it's an exact match. So with this one, I'm not exactly sure what this track is, and it does sound like it could be from Andromeda. The clip then finishes with Arlac Company. So it goes Eden Prime, Unknown Track, Andromeda, and then Arlac Company. It's a very interesting compilation of music to include. Majority of the music is from the original trilogy with some Andromeda sprinkled in there. I would also like to point out that there's something very aesthetically reminiscent of the Tempest in this new N7's design. I know it's the color scheme, but it's also the simplicity of the design and curvature of the lines. If you look at the armor and helmet next to the Tempest, it looks like they are based off of each other, specifically with the helmet lines. I don't think it means much because this overall N7 doesn't look like they're from the aesthetics of Andromeda. It's just interesting how much they remind me of each other. And speaking of helmet and this new N7's design, when I look at the Geth poster from 2021, I don't see this helmet in there. The middle helmet still looks like the white and blue Pathfinder helmet, and the individual in front doesn't look like they're even wearing a helmet, which would make sense if it was Liara because Asari usually wore face mask over helmets. The left obviously looks exactly like Rex, and I don't know who the individual on the right is, but I don't see anyone all clad in black with this very black and rounded helmet, which I find really interesting. You'd think if this was our new protagonist and squad, they'd be in both of these early teased pieces. Maybe the N7's look has changed from last year, but I still don't see an N7's color scheme here. Something else about the poster is it could be this ship in the clip as well. The Mudskipper and this ship look to be a similar size, but this one has a flatter roof that we can see where the Mudskipper had some beams protruding from the top. Unless those are retractable, this would be the flatter ship of the two and would match the ship in the clip more closely than the other Mudskipper. And it also does look like there could be an additional ship here to the left, specifically a ship with a long narrow nose like the Tempest. And as far as the whole vibe of the trailer, this doesn't really look like a hero to me. This looks like someone sneaking around, or at least someone who isn't a recognizable decorated military leader. Maybe they're an agent of the Shadow Broker. Whatever they are, the scene, this body movement, and tone of this entire clip is very renegade-y. I understand why people think this is the antagonist. I don't personally ascribe to that theory, but I could see it. This clip is the exact opposite of Liara's clip, which was very light and bright, even with the sun highlighting the scene reflecting on the snow to make stuff even brighter. It's everything this trailer wasn't. So this could be an intentional opposite to Liara's teaser, and it probably is. Everything with bioware is intentional. But I still think this is the protagonist, and that's why we can't see their face. But I think it's a protagonist who will be leaning more into the Paragon and Renegade ambiguity that we knew in the original trilogy. And like I say in my video and pointed out on Twitter, the Paragon symbol is in the poster that was released, and the colors heavily implied it as well. So when I see this clip, I think, this person is lawless and plays by their own rules. I also don't think this is Liara, because we've already seen Liara with her new outfit and the big reveal. They wouldn't do another reveal only to hide her again. And one last piece of speculation is that in last year's clip, there was a reflection of an N7 stripe. I didn't see it at first, but once you zoom in and look, it's there. Which reminds me of this N7. So maybe that clip has this N7 looking through a window or screen, and we're seeing the reflection of their jacket, kind of like the original Mass Effect marketing. And in this video, I just wanted to analyze the audios and visuals of this clip. I'll go more into the code and findings in another video, where I'll also go over the possible timeline, so be on the lookout for that. And just as a reminder, literally nothing has been confirmed yet. We don't know the timeline or who the N7 is, or literally any detail whatsoever. Gamble and team have given clues and hints, but no concrete answers. So while this is all fun to break down and speculate, it could change and it could also mean nothing. Don't get too stuck on one theory or possibility until we know more. Lastly, I don't know if this will be shown at the Game Awards. I assume they'd want to focus on Dragon Age Dreadwolf before any major Mass Effect reveals, but this trailer feels like it's part of a larger scene. So maybe one day we'll see the entire thing if there's more to it. And if you're still here, thank you for keeping an open mind. There's not much to go on, but speculating is fun, and I love how a 21-second clip turned into a 15-minute video. If I missed anything in this breakdown of the clip, or if you have any more theories about this N7 or what's going on in this clip, let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.